Hey everyone, Fire here, and today I'm going to be talking about how I farmed my day 3 Mageblood in Caldera. So it's day 3, and I've finished off the first of many Magebloods that I'm planning on farming this league. However, I wanted to make a video going through the process that I used to farm it, since a lot of practice and a lot of preparation went into this strategy, and I felt it was just really worth sharing. The gist of this strat just came down to basically farming lots of tier 11 Caldera with a certain Atlas passive setup that we'll go through later, and I was rolling 4 skittering Delirium Orbs on each map. Now this is 80% Delirious, and it's 4 times Scarab rewards. We were also rolling these maps with 4 chisels to make them 20% quality, and making them magic so that we could help boost our map sustain and just in general increase mob count by a bit. But we didn't want to make them rare, and we didn't want to run them scoured, but I'll give you the breakdown of that shortly. So I did tier 11 mainly because I didn't want to do any white or yellow maps based on the fact that a lot of the mechanics we're juicing with, such as Harbinger, Breach, etc., are all time-based, and it wouldn't have made it that much faster to do it on a lower tier map. But if I did it on a higher tier map, I would have had to run a lower level of Delirium, since it would have started to take too long to clear the map. So tier 11 was a sweet spot, and in particular I like the Caldera map, which just happened to sort of be perfect for this strategy, and so ended up going for tier 11. I did try tier 14 and tier 16 Caldera. It slowed down the currency per hour, so I ended up settling on tier 11. Now, why Caldera? Basically, it's got very high mob count, there's not a lot of backtracking, or basically no backtracking, and there's lots of Gargantuan mod drops for Arch Nemesis. Now, I don't think this one is too important, since Arch Nemesis was not making up a large portion of the profits overall. However, being able to drop lots of Gargantuan meant that I could put 3 or 4 extra currency rewards into every map, and it wasn't adding that much time to the map, considering a lot of the time I wanted to clear 1 to 3 Arch Nemesis mobs out for some extra progress along my rewards track. Why 80% deli? Well, I did testing on, basically 40, 60, and 80% deli, as well as 100% deli briefly to gauge exactly what the best profit per hour was. 80% was the sweet spot. If you look at the nodes on the tree, the things that give you double chance for bosses and stuff, you want to run really 60% minimum to guarantee bosses on every map. 40% is slightly more efficient for that, since you're not wasting the extra 20%, but the thing is, think of it this way. If you could hypothetically run all of your Deli Orbs on a single map, you would. You can't do that because too many Deli Orbs makes the map too hard, and on top of that, you're capped at 5, basically. But if you were able to hypothetically put 200 orbs onto a single map, that means you only have to run 1 set of scarabs in 1 map, and you could get through all of your orbs in time. Now, if you look at orbs as, every orb you get through is a certain amount of profit, the faster you get through all your orbs, the more profit you make. And 100% Deli is just too slow. 60% deli is not that much faster than 80%. So for my build, for the strat I'm doing, 80% was perfect. This doesn't mean 80% is perfect for you. It just means, for me, it was. I'm a very frugal player. I don't like investing too much into my builds until after I have a Headhunter or a Mageblood. So I basically just invested to the point where 80% deli was doable pretty fast and wasn't that much slower than 60% deli, and then I ran with that. So why Scarab Deli Orbs? Basically, it's just the highest profit per orb. I tested a lot of orbs. I even, on day 2, was doing Amorphous and Imperial and some other minor ones, mainly because basically the supply for skittering Deli Orbs was just not there. It was very, very light. I don't know why exactly. I think some skittering Deli Orb sources were nerfed. I know that Dementophobia isn't as available anymore. That was the div card that gave Deli Orbs, although skittering didn't come out of Dementophobia that often anyway, so I don't really know why this is the case, but the supply of skittering Deli Orbs was just very low, so I couldn't run it fully on day 2, but on day 3, today, I think I did about 8 hours worth of farming so far, and it was just full-on 4 skittering orbs every single map. Now, what was the setup I was using? I was doing Rusted Harbinger, Rusted Abyss, Rusted Breach, Rusted Shaper. They all give a lot of mobs, and they're all fairly cheap, right? So it's not exactly that they are the highest amount of mobs added per map, and it's not that they're the cheapest, but they're a nice combination of the two. They consistently give between 9 to 10 rewards when done on tier 11 Caldera. Investing in polished scarabs never pushed me up to an 11. Even when I hit Alva, or I had Alva to run on my map and spawn a lot of other mechanics, I was pretty much never hitting 11 rewards. That might have something to do with the map that I was running. It might have also had something to do with the fact that I didn't consistently have Beyond and Sextants and stuff like that on my maps. But basically 9 to 10 was the cap, more or less. And I think it was pretty much, you couldn't get 10 without getting loads of extra mechanics or an Alva anyway. So yeah, there was just no reason to invest into Polished, and I could push up consistently to a 10 and maybe an 11 when I hit Alva with Gildeds, but then it wasn't worth the increased investment. Since the Deli reward scaling is non-linear, it basically, the jump from 9 to 10 and then from 10 to 11 gets a lot higher compared to you know, jumping from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, etc. Harvey and Abyss scale really, really, really well with the new Atlas passives. I'm going to show you that in a minute. There are some really nice ones. Now, Harvey and Abyss is kind of useless without these passives and without Deli, but if you're running them for Deli Juice, they're amazing. They are absolutely amazing, and you're going to see that for yourself. Shape of Breach basically just adds lots of extra mobs for low cost. I was kind of so on running Breach. I feel like Breach takes a lot of time compared to the amount of mobs it adds to the map, and also the fact that it's still costing, you know, like I think an extra Chaos or Chaos and a half to put these on your map. So I'm not 100% sure whether even running Breach was the right play, but, you know, it was going to be close anyway, and I had the extra slot at that point, so I decided to use it. And ultimately, we were running Abyss from the map device. Now, I wasn't sure whether it was going to come down to Abyss or Harbinger. I tested both. Abyss just came out ahead. Abyss was giving pretty much consistently more mobs than Harbinger, thanks to the new nodes on the Atlas passives, and it's also cheaper. So Abyss was just a clear winner. I recorded an 8-minute Atlas passive tree run through and decided to just cut it because a lot of it's explaining the obvious. So I'm going to do a shortened version where basically you can go through this video and look at the nodes that I've taken on my tree if you want to copy it. I'm not even going to provide a link since there's a lot of stuff wasted here, such as all this Eldritch stuff up here is wasted. This Deli stuff up here is totally unnecessary. These Breach nodes over here are unnecessary. The things I'm going to talk about that are important that I think you actually do really want though are these Deli nodes over here. I think the Beyond stuff adds a nice amount of extra passive mobs into your maps. Getting the free Strongbox every map, getting the free Shrine, some extra mobs that I think you can't afford not to take since they're so close. Getting the extra chance for an Alva mission is pretty important. I think you want all the Essence-related stuff, because it's a lot of extra currency, especially once you take all of it, and on top of that, it's just so free since it's already along the way for all the stuff that we're typically getting. So if you can see here, like the Essence stuff is only 3 points off here, it's only 3 points off here, it's 4 points here, and then another 4 points over here. So all up, what's that come to? I think it's 14 extra nodes to get all the Essence stuff, and it's just a lot of extra passive currency. The things that are really important to get, the things I want to talk about are these Abyss and Harvey nodes here and here, basically. So this Harvey node is making your Harbingers all spawn a lot faster, so you're spending a lot less time in your maps by taking this stuff. Getting this one over here gives you a free Harbinger every map, which is lots of extra free mobs, and getting this gives you the chance for the boss Harbinger. This is just a lot of extra free mobs on average, you know, per map. And then the Abyssal stuff, Abyssal Army, and then taking the 3 passive nodes over here for for increased monsters. It basically means every Abyss that spawns has 130% increased monsters. Now, you're getting 2 per map, usually. That's 460% worth of Abyss monsters from 2 Abyss encounters. It's a lot of extra mobs. These are some of the strongest nodes in the game for Deli farming at the moment. I fully expect Abyssal Army to get nerfed because the amount of extra mobs it's spawning in is just absolutely busted. But yeah, these are the only things that are important. Like, all of this can be cut all of this, you can probably cut this. But yeah, just Beyond, Essence, Harvey, Abyss, and then I guess the Breach stuff down here is optional, but yeah, everything else is not really that important. When I first explained my strat to my IRL friends, they had a bunch of questions for me, and I decided to just make this slide, which pretty much lists all of the questions they asked me, and this will probably save you some time since I can answer these questions before you have to ask them. So you might ask, why not 100% Deli? Well, quite simply, it was just way too slow. If you had a much better build than I have, go for it. You know, if it's not making your maps a lot slower, you should absolutely do 100% Deli. You're going to be able to grind through your rewards faster. Why not 60% Deli? Well, it was only 1 minute faster per run on average, and 25% less rewards. I determined it just wasn't as good currency per hour as 80% Deli for my build and my strat. Why not Strand? Well, quite frankly, Strand is a natural tier 14, and doing tier 14s at 80% Deli is a little too slow for my liking. Again, if I had a better build, Strand's probably a little better. Don't make the mistake of thinking, so the approach that everyone has is basically to run maps like Strand or Beach when it comes to Deli, because that allows you to condense all of your rewards and all of your mechanics into one small area, and you can run them all really quickly. Here's the thing, when you're running tons of Breach, tons of Harbinger, tons of, all of that sort of stuff, you are not spending that much time running between your mechanics. Most of the time you're spending is just doing these mechanics. So when you're loading up a map with like tons of stuff like that, the layout of the map doesn't matter as much. The mob density matters a lot more. Getting an extra tick of scarabs is much more valuable than saving a tiny bit of time running. Now, when you're trying to speedrun maps, obviously having stuff like Beach and Strand is really important because you can finish these maps in well under a minute on a decently fast build. You can even get to 30 seconds if you have a really, really fast build, compared to stuff like Caldera, which genuinely might take you as long as 2 minutes on a fast build because it's just a lot of running, right? It's basically one continuous tunnel with like these breaks that you break up the layout to make it not appear like a continuous tunnel, but yeah, it's a pretty long layout overall. That doesn't really matter when you're doing this kind of juicing. The layout is not going. I did test some Strand on 60% deli, and it was about roughly as fast, just less rewarding, so lower profit per hour. Okay, why not yellow and white maps? As I explained before, lower splinter count, and the league rewards are weaker. Actually, I don't know if I did explain that before, but yeah, some league rewards are basically weaker if you're doing them on yellow and white maps, and the splinter count is lower. It was possibly going to be maybe marginally better in high-tier yellow maps, but I didn't have time to test, and I couldn't really be bothered testing, to be perfectly honest, since a lot of the yellow maps that I was scouting didn't really have good layouts. They just weren't sort of what I wanted to farm, and Caldera was really working for me. I didn't want to waste more time testing when I needed to just get stuck into doing my strat, and Caldera appeared to be working. It's entirely possible that there's a tier 9 or a tier 10 that's going to yield slightly higher currency per hour, but I think the Caldera strat's like pretty on the money in terms of what you want from it. Okay, so why not other Deli Orbs? Quite simply, skittering is just the highest profit, and there's no increased difficulty. It's not like putting skittering Deli Orbs makes the game harder to run. The only thing you have to consider with skittering Deli Orbs is that the supply is very fucking limited, right? Like, it burns me how limited the supply was this league. I am very tilted. On day 2 last league, I was buying skittering Deli Orbs for 4 to 6C. Day 2 this league, I was buying them for like 35C. It's pretty scuffed. The supply is it's just absolutely in the toilet. There was a period where I was running 2 skittering orbs and 1 or 2 of another orb. Like, I was running some 60% deli, and even when I was running 80% deli, I was running 2 of like some other type of orb that was a little weaker in terms of profit. Quite simply because if I just ran all my skitterings, I would be out of deli-related stuff. I just wanted to keep grinding scarabs at a comfortable pace, but yeah. The supply, I very well could have depleted the entire market's worth of supply if I had just run 80% skittering deli from the get-go, like all day long, from day 2. Okay, why not polished and gilded? Well, you pretty much need to do full gilded in order to hit 11 rewards consistently, and it's just not worth it, right? You have to invest a lot of extra money in order to hit that 11 breakpoint, and you might look at it and say, well, the extra scarabs you're getting are going to just pay off for it. So it does increase your profit per map, but it's massively increasing your time per map. When you're running Gilded Breach, that's 3 breaches per map. When you're running Gilded Harbinger, I believe that's 4 Harbingers per map extra, right? Stuff like that is just massively decreasing your profit per hour. You can get to 9 to 10 rewards pretty easily. Getting to 11 requires loads and loads and loads of extra mobs, and you can do it. And it may make your profit per map slightly higher, but it tanks your profit per hour. And I tested, so I'm telling you for certain, gilded and polished scarabs are not the play here. Why not Legion, Breach, and Expedition scarabs? Basically, they're just too costly for the amount of mobs they add. Legion in particular, Explosive Arrow, the build I'm playing, is not particularly good at clearing the monolith out. But yeah, these are just basically, these mechanics are either taking a little too long on average, or they... Expedition, I have to actually pay attention to what I'm doing. I can't just, like, AFK mentally and watch Netflix and stuff like that, or talk to my friends. So, yeah, stuff like this, it's too costly, it's too finicky, too bothersome. If you want to do it, do it, but I didn't want to do it. Why not Sextants? Basically, I think they're, like, too expensive in bulk to buy them, and I'm not quite sure. I haven't looked at the weightings yet and figured out whether it was worth it. My strat was working without Sextants, and I couldn't really see that Sextants were going to massively increase my profit per hour. So I decided to just leave them. If you want to do some testing for yourself and figure this out, go ahead. I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about the calculator I made for the strategy. It was a really important part of pulling the strategy off and making sure I was staying profitable. Basically, you're punching in your costs on this side, and then you are totaling your income. Now, your income is determined by excellence. I have an excellence tab, which I'm periodically emptying out and then filling back up and doing sets of 5 to 10 maps or whatever, and then figuring out the income per map. As you can see over here, income per map. I'll type it in here, and the cost per map is going to come from everything calculated on the left side, so I can determine whether how many skittering orbs, how many orbs I'm putting onto my map, what type they are skittering. They're costing 40C each. It's going to cost 3C to buy a Caldera map or Horizon into a Caldera, and then put chisels on it and roll it with alts. Yeah, as you can see here, basically, it's just giving me the profit per hour of my strat. This is really important, and I'm going to show you why. So let's say that skittering orbs go up in price. They're going to cost 50C instead of 40C. Now, to a lot of people, this is only 10 extra C per orb. Not a big deal. This is an insane strat, and 10C extra per orb isn't going to make a big difference overall. Well, you're wrong. Here's the thing. Look at this. So, at 40C per orb, I'm getting 4.59 exalts per hour profit. Watch what happens when I bump it up to 50. 1.67 exalts per hour profit. Now, the reason why is because my income is static at this like 1700 number, but the cost per hour is going up significantly, and it's eating into the margins. Now, this is what people talk about when they're talking about profit margin. You know, like, the profit doesn't exactly scale with the cost the way you might think it does, and small shifts in price in terms of the amount of money a strategy is costing you can completely eat into the profit margin and destroy the profitability of the strat you're doing. This is why whenever Grimmer releases a video saying, hey, this is the best, thing to farm, a lot of the time it's not the best thing to farm anymore because everyone else is doing it, everyone's driving the prices up, and the income in this column, in this case, would be down. Let's just say skittering daily orbs went up to 60C. You're losing money doing this strat at that point, right? 60C doesn't sound like a huge increase in price, but that's all it would take to make you actively lose money spending your time farming this strat. I think the breakpoint's closer around 55, yeah. So as you can see, if skitterings hit 55 and scarab prices remain as what they are, the strat's you're basically breaking even, and it's not really worth it. And this calculator was really important for keeping up with that. One other thing to keep in mind, however, is that the income here is based off of the excellence total. So I will just basically divide this number up here with the amount of maps that I ran to get that. Now, this is just calculating a single tab, and I was in the middle of doing a set when I decided, hey, I can afford a Mageblood, I'm going to go buy the Mageblood and then finish off this set of testing after I make the video. But basically, these numbers can effectively just be inflated by about 30 to 40% a lot of the time, and the reason for that is because Excellence is calculating the scarab prices in singles, but you're selling scarabs in bulk, so you get to charge a bit more. So it's not the end of the world if it does go up to 50, but if it does go up to 50, even adding the extra, let's just, as an example, increase it by 30%. Okay, so it would still be worth doing at 50, and in fact the profit per hour is probably a lot closer to what I'm actually realistically making at the moment. But yeah, as you can see, if I put this back down to 40, then yeah, okay. Now you understand why I have a Mageblood on day 3. 9.72 exalts, yeah, that's probably a little closer. So yeah, this is whatever strat you're farming, I really recommend making a calculator like this, especially in the early days of the league. The economy is really unstable. It's very, very, very important to constantly keep up to date with what you're doing, how much money you're making, how much money you can expect to make if you buy your materials at a certain cost, and, had the skittering orbs climbed up steadily, a lot faster than they did anyway, I probably would have abandoned the strategy and gone to simulacrum farming instead. So this was really helpful. It allowed me to just keep grinding with confidence, and I didn't have to sit around worrying, hey, am I doing the wrong thing? Am I going to stop making money? When you have money coming in and out constantly, it's very hard to keep track of whether the thing you're doing is actually raising your net worth. Especially, a lot of the time, I would sell off the scarabs and then use the money to buy more skittering daily orbs and then roll the skittering daily orbs, and Excellence can't really track that. Excellence can't tell you that a Caldera that you have in your inventory with 80% daily is worth a certain amount of money. So you're pretty much going in blind, and having a calculator like this is absolutely necessary if you're going to be doing a strategy like this, where the strategy has to actively continue to fund itself. So yeah. So I saw Path of Math talking about how the initial few days of his league were a little unhealthy and how he didn't sleep enough, and I decided to make this slide where I would talk about that sort of thing myself, talk about how this affected me outside of the game and as a human being, really, what went into this little sprint, and why maybe you shouldn't aspire to copy what I'm doing, because while it's fun and while I definitely love having the bragging rights, it is very unhealthy, and you'll see why when we get into talking about it. So first off, 2 weeks of prep work went into what was effectively a 3-day sprint. It was actually closer to a 2.5-day sprint. I still have the other half of day 3 left to go, and I probably would expect that after I record this video, I'm going to do another 8 hours of grinding, since I now want to start upgrading my gear and working on my second Mageblood, perhaps with a different strategy. I did practice leveling for Explosive Arrow and Poison Concoction mainly. Some leveling practice went in for other builds. Tornado Shot Occultist was a high level candidate for doing this sort of farm. The reason I ultimately decided to go with Explosive Arrow was because I felt that Explosive Arrow had the defensive profile to then scale into Simulacrums, where Tornado Shot Occultist, it just didn't quite have the defensive setup that allowed it to do wave 30 Simulacrum when fully invested. You can scale it to, you know, decently high levels of movement speed, clear speed, and 200 million DPS, but the defenses just wouldn't be there to survive a wave 30 consistently, and that was kind of a problem for me, since I wanted the flexibility to be able to do Simulacrums if this farm fell off pretty fast, and it's possible after I make this video that's what's going to end up happening as a result of releasing the video and talking about the strat. Yeah, so after I did the leveling practice, I then practiced map progression on both builds. That was basically just doing SSF runs with a handful of characters and trying to get them to tier 16 maps with pretty much no unique gear to sort of just test the limits of the build. It wasn't about necessarily getting the practice in for my own speed, but it was about understanding that, you know, for example, Explosive Arrow really did need the uniques in order to pop off. Doing it fully SSF, while possible, it wasn't quite the best build if it didn't have access to those uniques. I think it's very impressive that Steel has managed to, I think he's currently number 2 in the solo self-found hardcore race with Explosive Arrow Ignite Ballistas, but yeah, it was a lot slower compared to a lot of the other candidates, and this is trade. I have to evaluate this in terms of how it performs when I have access to gear, so yeah, that all those things sort of come into consideration when I'm testing. Finally, I did deli farming, so I actually had to farm my profit strat, and most leagues I practice the profit strat more than I practice the leveling and all that, like the map progression related stuff. A big part of why I'm able to do 8 of these maps per hour is because I spent most of the last week just farming this strat already, right? I would come home from work, and I would spend the next few hours basically doing this farm, but purely for practice. So I think a lot of people overlook that. If you look at Path of Math's video, he was talking about how his daily maps are taking him upwards of 15 minutes in some cases, and I know from a lot of other people that that's how long a lot of their maps take. I practice specifically with Explosive Arrow Ignite Ballistas, which with pretty much the exact same build I currently have, the Stormcloud, the Skirmish, the Tabular, etc., because I wanted to know how long it was taking me, and I wanted to figure out ways that I could improve it by getting very used to the rhythm and getting very used to just little things, such as when you are just at when you're getting towards the end of a map and you're at the beginning of 9 rewards and you know that there aren't mechanics left to do in the map, if you do encounter a breach, you know to skip it because it's not worth actually doing the breach if you can't reach the 10 reward proc. So you just skip it entirely and start a new map. And it's small stuff like that that I'm optimizing to get 8 maps in per hour. Now, I did 20-hour sessions back to back, followed by an 8-hour session today. This was pretty brutal on me. It took 13 energy drinks, so I'm not kidding. Like, I have lots of empty cans of Bang energy drink. 13, in fact, I counted before I made the video. And I also got through an entire bottle of Jaeger. So as you can see here, totally empty. Not at all necessary, by the way, but in order to get into the zone and grind 20 hours a day, yeah, I kind of need to be balancing energy drink to keep me awake and alcohol to sort of put me in the zone. It's very unhealthy. I really wouldn't recommend it, especially if you feel like you don't need it. And you know, this is why I tend to take breaks between leagues. It's also why I don't enjoy streaming and stuff like that. It's just a very unhealthy habit, and it's a very unhealthy way of playing the game. And I really just would recommend doing without it if you can. Now, something I wanted to talk about, since I don't feel it's fair to keep, you know, this under the table necessarily, but I hate trading for Deli Orbs, and that shouldn't surprise anyone. If you have a problem with this, you're the problem. The supply of day 2 Deli Orbs was kind of non-existent, as I mentioned before, and so I paid a trader friend a 33% cut of my profits to pretty much just buy my single Deli Orbs, because it was just too... It was too disruptive to my mapping. You have to have a live search going on day 2, since no bulk exists, and you're just losing a lot of portals, constantly portaling out of your map to make a sale. It's not very practical. I really wouldn't recommend doing it that way. If you want to do this strat, and you want to pop off on day 2, find a friend and just tell them you're going to pay them a bunch of money to get your Deli Orbs for you. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a shit situation overall. I feel like a lot of this could be solved either by them fixing the Daily Orb availability again, like they fixed it last league, and then they broke it again this league. But even stuff like, I know a lot of people are against an auction house and stuff like that, but as much as an auction house would make it harder for me to be that far ahead of other players, I still think it would just be more healthy for the game. I would enjoy trading a lot more, and so would other people. Anyway, that's a can of worms, probably not worth opening, but yeah, basically I did have a bit of help. I paid for the help, right? So, you know, maybe could have done the Mageblood sooner without it, or longer, I don't know, I don't care, but I'm definitely not going to sit there and constantly leave my map to buy, you know, single Daily Orbs and whatnot. It's just not practical. It's not practical, and I really wouldn't recommend this strat. If you might be able to pull this strat off and get a Day 3 Mageblood doing it purely solo without any help, but yeah. Day 3 is a little better, though. The supply was definitely there on Day 3, and although I had to pay a small premium a lot of the time, being able to buy 20 Daily Orbs in a single trade is just beautiful. And there are people that they will sit there on Day 2 and live search and try and snipe all the Daily Orbs that go up, so that on Day 3 they can sell them at a massively inflated premium in bulk. Yep, sure, I had to pay the premium, but it's definitely a lot better than having to do the trading yourself, or having to give a cut of your profits to a trader. Okay, I'm probably going to keep grinding for more Magebloods. As much as it's fun being able to brag to people that I farmed the first Mageblood in Trade League out of the content creators, one Mageblood isn't enough. I'm just going to keep going for more, and we'll probably make a video every time I do, and we'll talk about the strats I used to farm the Mageblood. And I had a great time overall. Especially since I didn't have to trade for my Daily Orbs, I fucking had a great time. I absolutely love this league. I think this league is wonderful for the casual player base. I don't know that it quite has the depth and replayability for high-level players such as myself. Now, people like myself, Grim Rope Math, we're going to exhaust the entire Atlas passive tree. We're going to try every strat. We're going to try every different currency making method known to mankind, and even the ones that you probably haven't thought of yet. We're going to have a lot of information for you by the end of this league. Here's the problem. In future leagues, it's going to kind of be a problem where everything's already figured out, there's nothing left to discover, and there's just a set-in-stone meta. If you guys remember from Ritual to Ultimatum, Ritual was considered one of the best leagues of all time, and then Ultimatum was considered one of the worst leagues, and it had really low player retention because, well, we had gotten all these cool Atlas passives, the Maven passives rather. The thing was, we had worked everything out, and then all of the strong stuff got nerfed, and we had a very good idea going into Ultimatum of what was going to be the best thing to farm. So we just farmed those things, and there was no profitability at all to those methods of making money since everyone was doing them. Yeah, I really think the Atlas passive tree needs to be changed up regularly. I think new nodes need to be rotated in and out all the time, every patch. I just don't think it's going to work if GGG think they're going to leave the Atlas passive tree as it is, because I'm going to keep doing this strat every league, and if this gets nerfed or gets overfarmed, then I have a list of things that I already know the profit per hour that they can be farmed at, and I'm just going to work my way down the list. I think it really would benefit from being changed up, so that every league we have to come into it fresh and try and work out new strats and you know, have new variables to play around with. The economic meta has been very stale, and I think ultimately that's what's led to low player retention. Maybe that's just me, but speaking to a lot of friends, a lot of viewers, etc., a lot of people just feel like, okay, they've gotten all their gear, they've done all the endgame bosses, and now it just comes down to farming money for the sake of farming money, and they're just doing the same farms that they did last league and the league before that, and the league before that, because nothing's really changed. I think changing up the economic meta would give people some motivation to find new strats, or at least farm things they weren't farming in the previous leagues, which means it's still fresh and it's still fun for them. I also do think there needs to be some kind of later game progression than what we have. I had everything fully completed and everything unlocked that I wanted to unlock by the end of day 1, pretty much. The new bosses are insanely easy. I just don't know what there is left to do, right? I think it's a simulacrum farming, maybe delving, maybe blight ravage maps, but there's not much else left to do, and it's only day 3. Day 2.5 even. It's a little worrying. I had a great time so far, but I don't know that I'm going to continue having a great time like this, you know, this time next week or this time next month. So that's definitely something I think GG need to think about. I think something you guys need to think about as well when you are thinking about what kind of feedback you want to give GGG on Reddit and on the forums and stuff like that. So yeah, anyway, that's the debrief. Sorry that was such a long time. I'm going to leave some footage at the end of this video so that you can kind of see what a typical map looked like. Keep in mind, don't read into everything that happened in this map, since I was constantly testing different variations of the strategy. re-entering the values into the calculator and re-evaluating my options. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of show what it looks like, what kind of loot is dropping, the kind of speed that you can expect depending on what mechanics spawn on the map, that sort of thing. I thought maybe you'd get something out of that. If you don't, I guess this is the end of the video for you. So if you like this video, give me a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys the next time I have something currency related to talk about.